Wow, okay. Embracing you, which we do. I mean, it's been an incredible year and a half here. You have touched Ash and I's lives so incredibly deeply. We embrace you. We're just so in love with you, and take each and every one of you with us as we go on our next adventure. And the meat of my talk today is about you embracing yourself, loving yourself, caring for yourself. And what I've noticed for myself is that that's not always so easy, particularly if I get very critical about me being my best. Turns out, when the Dalai Lama one of his first visits over to this country, he gathered up all his teachers, and they were going over the compassion meditation, which is one of the fundamental meditations of Tibetan Buddhism. And as they were going over this, a woman, Susan Salzberg, raised her hand and said, "Is it okay if people in the US take that compassion ball and before sending it out into the world, put it on themselves first, because people here don't seem to like themselves very much?" And the Dalai Lama stared at her, not understanding what she was saying. The translator's trying to translate, because it turns out in Tibet, they have no words, no concept of not liking yourself. It doesn't exist. And so it took him a while to understand what it was this woman was trying to say. Once he did, he was shocked. It was like, oh, of course, let them put it on themselves first. And then he had a study done, because he wanted to know more about this, around the world, around liking yourself. And it turns out from this study that people in the US like themselves less than almost every country in the world. And so we really do have this issue about self-love. We struggle with this. It's real. It's real for me. I've been reading this book by Brené Brown. It's called The Gifts of Imperfection. And I tell you now that this is required reading for any human being on the planet. If there's one book you're going to read over this next whatever time period, please let it be that one. And she said some things in there that just jumped out at me around why it is we struggle so much with liking ourselves. Now, I have my own opinion about this, and one of them has to do with achievement. We base so much of our self-esteem on whether we achieve or not. We feel good about ourselves or bad about ourselves based on results. And even in this teaching, that's a problem. Because we have this thing around our teaching around, if you do this treatment work, you will get results. Well, what if you don't? How do you feel good about yourself then? It gets kind of hard. Am I the only one here who has said, what am I doing wrong? This isn't working. Am I the only one? And so even though we call it an inside job, we here seem to still treat it as the same as an outside job, because we're still looking for results instead of looking for that quality of ourselves, of loving ourselves, which is what we want to be doing, right? We want to be loving ourselves. We want to feel good about ourselves. We want to know that we are good people, even when we don't do our best. Even when things aren't working out, we want to feel that sense of self-love, that sense of self-caring, right? And so Brené Brown in her book it gives an ancient definition for courage. Turns out that now we look at courage and we think of it as being heroic, but originally it simply meant sharing your heart wholly and completely. That's the original meaning of courage. And it is in that sense that I was like, oh, yes, authentic. Being authentic, being truly fully ourselves. And feeling good about that. Not going, oh, well, there's a part of me I wouldn't want anybody to see. Now, am I the only one who's ever said that? And so, many moons ago, when I was the music director here the last time, I put out a CD called Walk Across Fire, and they had a ministers gathering here where all the other ministers got to hear it, and they started inviting me around to play at other churches. And that's when I started moving out of being the music director here, is when I started going around to other centers and playing my music. And then ultimately doing talks, and that developed. Well, I get to my first church, and the introduction, the man goes, and this is the most authentic man I have ever met. And I was shocked, because I didn't feel authentic. Whatever I looked like out here, I was at a place in my life where I was very uncomfortable in my skin. Have you ever felt uncomfortable in your skin? I felt so I didn't know what he was talking about. And then it was weird because I went on, played at other places, and that introduction followed me. The most authentic person I ever met. And I was like, what are they seeing about me that I'm not seeing about myself? And it really wasn't till, so this is like, I'm talking 15 years ago, right? I've been looking at this, and so one of the things that happened through all that is I decided, well, if I'm going to be seen that way, I might as well become that way. And that didn't turn out to be so easy, right? Because I have thoughts that I'm not crazy about, that I don't really like to share. Am I the only one? And so I was in a position where I'm looking at this and I'm going, well, how do I become more authentic, more like people see me? I mean, that I'm this authentic guy. How do I bring that out? And so, and that's what brought me to my first sense of, well, I've got to like myself more, because it turns out I didn't like myself very much. And what I discovered is in not liking myself, I resented other people who didn't like me. And that was a really interesting thing for me to discover about myself. Wow, I'm holding all these resentments about other people when it's me who's not liking me. And so I started doing this compassion meditation. I started taking it in. I started looking at, what does it really take for me to be this authentic person I want to be in this world and like myself, right? And so over time, that came and went. Maybe you've had that situation where you have times in your life where you really like yourself, and then you have these other times where you're not so crazy about yourself. Things are maybe because things aren't going so well, you're not achieving what you think you ought to be achieving. For me, it was the music. I wasn't achieving what I thought I should be achieving. And because I was in this teaching and taking full responsibility for who I am and what I create in the world, I was like, I must really suck at this. And so I kept looking at who I was being, and at some point dropped what I was doing as something to focus on, what I was achieving as something to focus on, and started focusing more and more on simply how I was being whole and complete and loving myself. And that became my practice. And that was it. And what I noticed is after my third divorce, when I'm in this cabin in the woods, thinking it really is me, I really do need to shift here somehow, I could start feeling that place, and I started asking myself this question, several questions, and one of them is what's true for me now? What's actually true for me right now? What do I need to do now to feel good about myself now? What can I do to love on myself now, in this moment? And every time I started not feeling good about myself, I started doing that. I said, okay, dropped whatever it was I was doing, whether I thought it was important or not. And instead, started focusing on loving myself, liking myself more. And so I came out of the cabin, and I was in ministerial school at this point, and I don't know if I've ever shared this, but I've had 97 different types of work in my life. 97. It's a wild number if you think about it. And in doing all these different work, I'd walk away from them going, that didn't serve me. That didn't bring out the best in me. That wasn't mine to do. And I kept doing that with job. I've done so extraordinarily wild, different things. I was a chauffeur for Saturday Night Live in its heyday. I was a DJ. Obviously, I was a musician. I got to open for the Stones. I was a stockbroker down on Wall Street. I sold insurance for many years. I was an Electrolux door-to-door vacuum cleaner salesman. I produced a late-night talk show in San Francisco. It's all over the place, and none of them satisfied me, not a one. And it wasn't until this morning that it finally dawned on me why. Because here's the other thing that happened. So I'm going through all this, and now I'm in ministerial school. And I come out of ministerial school going, oh, okay, I don't really have a calling to be a minister at this point, but it's something I think I can do. I've gotten up at places, done the talk and done the music, and I thought, okay, I could be a minister. I could do this. And so I applied for this job out in California to be their senior minister. And I get the position, and I showed up in a suit and tie, my haircut, clean shaven, and I go in there, and I'm very inauthentic. I was being who I thought I had to be a minister. Now, that didn't mean I didn't bring my heart, I didn't bring my ideas and thoughts on science of mind and this, and my heart. I want to say that a second time because it's really important. But it still didn't feel right. And until this morning, I didn't know why. And it's because out of every one of those jobs, I expected them to be authentic for me instead of me bringing my authenticity to it. I kept expecting something out here that would connect with me enough for me to be motivated enough to want to keep doing it. But I wasn't bringing me. I was bringing this idea of me to fit in. And Brene Brown talks about this. She talks about how we all want to feel a sense of belonging. And what we do to get that is try to fit in. And as soon as we try to fit in, we give up our sense of belonging because we're no longer us who's there. It's this made-up us that we think we need to be to fit in. Am I the only one who's done that?
No.
And every time we try to fit in, we are not being authentic, not being ourselves, and so it actually moves us further from the actual belonging we're wanting. It moves us away from it. And so I went to all these different jobs, did all these different things, didn't feel like I belonged there because I didn't, because it wasn't me who showed up in the first place. But I was so dead set and determined, I just kept at it. Until finally, a few years ago, I turned to my wife and said, I feel pretty good in my skin now. This feels pretty good. How I am now with me. And it was around that time I started letting my hair grow, started letting my beard grow back in gray the way it is. My hair's not very gray, but my beard grew in gray. And I was, at first I was like, ooh, I look old. But it felt comfortable, and it felt more like me, and it felt like more like who I am. And that's what I wanted. And so I kind of went with that. Not kind of, I did go with that, as you can see. And so all of a sudden, I'm feeling really good in my skin, and we show up here, and I'm feeling more like me than ever before. So I get to be with you all in a way that is much more authentically me than I have ever been with another group. Now, does that mean I don't have more work to do? Here's the thing about that. I still have these habits of hiding. Maybe some of you have noticed that after service on Sundays, I get out of here as quickly as possible. It ain't like I normally go in there and hang out. Hiding. And I noticed that meant there are still parts of me I'm not crazy about. More work to do. More work to do. It's an evolving thing. And so Brené Brown has this definition of compassion. She says the original definition of compassion is being with others suffering. Not changing it, not turning it into something different, just being with it in a way that shares light. And so, I guess it's now, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago, I started a suicide crisis hotline. Started it right here in Asheville. I started it when I was still the music director here. Or when I was just finishing up being the music director. It was part of that time of that transition. John Waterhouse became the president of my board, and a lot of the practitioners here at that time volunteered to be on the phones for that suicide crisis hotline. One of the things we were taught about it is that if somebody's down at the bottom of a well, you don't throw them a lifeline. You get down there with them. Because that's compassion. Being with them in their pain. Now, us practitioners at the time were like, we don't want to get down there with them. We want to pull them up. Our job as practitioners is to pull them up and out of there. At the time, none of us really understood, including me, by the way. We were all incredibly uncomfortable with the idea that it was just about being with people, not transforming them, not supporting them even in their own transformation, that true compassion is simply just to be with them. And how hard that was. So one by one, all the practitioners quit. And after 3 years, I handed it off to a Christian organization. Because I didn't enjoy it all that much either. But what I realized from that was the part of me I couldn't sit with either. It wasn't that I was having trouble sitting with their pain. I was having trouble sitting with mine, being compassionate with myself. And when I felt that, when I felt that, it was like this, oh my God, I keep pushing away my own pain. That's not love. That's not compassion for me. And so that's what we're doing here, right? The spirituality, the ultimate love fest, has got to be for ourselves. It is absolutely true that you cannot love another more than you can love yourself, which is why we were all so uncomfortable with getting down in that well with people. We were uncomfortable with ourselves and didn't even know it. But I know it now. And so today I wanted to share that with you. So Ash and I went and we, on these 2 interviews, these 2 candidating to Seattle and to Edmonton. And one of the things that was most important to me was that I showed up as authentic as possible. That this time, if I was to connect with these folks, if this was really going to happen, it had to be because I was being me, not being who I think a minister should be. And that was vital in this trip. And so I didn't bring a suit. I didn't even bring slacks. And I showed up and I cracked all my jokes and I was loud and all the things that I've heard people say, oh, you're too much, man. Calm down, calm down. I did all those things that usually gets that kind of reaction. And in Edmonton, they were just like, we adore you. We want you here. This is what we're looking for. And I was like, oh, I can be totally myself and loved. But that couldn't have happened with Edmonton if I wasn't doing that with myself. That would have never shown up like that if I'd had any sort of thing going on around me. Being compassionate for me. Being open and wholehearted for me. And that's what I want for each of you. I want each of you to feel that place in yourself where you are just totally with yourself. In compassion. In love. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all what you have going on in your life. You are worthy of love. You are absolutely worthy to be loved, especially by you right now. And so I'd like to close with the compassion meditation. You guys good with that? Yes. All right. So take a deep breath. Sit back, relax in your seat, close your eyes. And feel your heart. Feel your heart beating. You can even put your hand to your heart if you'd like. This is your love center. Now feel it emanate out in front of you, creating a ball of energy that is this pure love, pure compassion, pure light. Feel it grow and grow. Really let it, all the love and compassion you've gotten you out into this ball. Feel the vibration of it, the solidness of it. And now step into it so that it surrounds you. So that you are inside the ball that you created with your love and your compassion. And now let it expand to where you feel everybody else in this room's ball of compassion, and they all feel yours. Feel the love here for you and everyone in this room. And now keep letting it expand and expand and expand. All throughout the country, to any and all throughout the world, to any and all. Love, compassion. Feel how this energy is here for you anytime you need it. Anytime you feel any way about yourself that isn't how it feels right now. You have this for yourself. And you have this to offer the world. When you're ready, open your eyes. This is how we get to feel all the time. There is no moment at which you are not worthy of this. There is no moment at which you are not the fulfillment of your own love and light. Every moment, every day. I love you. Thank you so much.